So Robert, in addition to your military law background, you have a lot of experience in the civilian law sector, right? Both in Texas and Oklahoma.
That's correct. That's primarily where I've practiced at, is in the civil court, civilian court.
Okay. And let me ask you something. What's the difference between the civil system, the civilian system, and the military system?
For the civil system, you have county government, you have state government. You can be charged in any multitude of counties. You can be charged, which has their own district attorney. You can also be charged in federal court. You could be in probate court. You could be in civil court regarding a failure to pay your credit card. You could be in divorce court if you want to have an issue with your child support, relationship with your children, relationship with your marriage. You can be sued. You could also have committed some sort of crime in the state of Texas in a certain county, or in the state of Oklahoma in a certain county, or in some city, and be tried there. And the easy thing for a lawyer is to remember which county or city or wherever the charges were or the case was, so you make sure you're in the right court.
So I guess the big difference is there's a multitude of venues in a civilian world where there's really limited venue in the military.
That's correct. If you're charged with a crime on the installation, whether it be a traffic offense and you're the magistrate there in the federal court system, or if you're charged with some sort of crime that's military related, you know what courtroom you're going to be in, you know where that's going to be at, you know who's going to try that case. And that's not necessarily always the same opinion when you're in civil court, or civilian court, when you're in civilian court.
And when you're in civilian court, sometimes there's arguments over who has the venue or the jurisdiction.
That's correct. In Oklahoma, there is a lot of question as on the criminal side and in the civil side on whether there's even tribal issues that would make tribes be responsible for those offenses. Everybody likes to go to the casinos in Oklahoma, but casinos are not typically Oklahoma law land. There's tribal land. So even if you commit an offense there or you get injured there, you may not be entitled to go to state court for that.
So a soldier who goes to a casino in Oklahoma, someone stationed, say, at Fort Sill, and they commit a crime in a casino, they could not only be responsible criminally in the military court system, but also in tribal court?
They could, if the tribal court has a designated court. Now, some tribal courts have a arrangement with the county or the state to try those cases, but there is a big Supreme Court decision which talks about when and where the tribal courts would be involved.
Okay. But do they apply the same standard of proof in the military as they do in the civilian criminal courts?
Typically, if it's a civilian matter, if it's a civil court matter, a probate matter, divorce matter, that would be the same sort of preponderance of the evidence. If it's a criminal matter, it would still be the same standard of reasonable doubt and the same for the search warrants and things of that nature.
Okay. What is the biggest difference between the military system and then a state criminal system?
So, of course, one of the big issues that if you're in a criminal setting is, bail and all those matters. And in military courts, a lot of times that's not an issue. A lot of times they're gonna let you out because the commander can say you're not to leave the installation, you're not to leave, do this, you're not to do that. You can't do that in the civilian world. The people might leave. So that's one issue, is that pretrial element of it.
Pretrial confinement.
Right. And so that's a big issue. But the other thing is, as it relates to, there's no civil, if you breach a contract on a military installation, the military courts are not going to pick that up. That's going to be completely prosecuted by the state.
Okay. And it's going to be in the civilian courts in that state.
That's correct.
Right. And so a military member goes from state to state to state. That state law where that actual breach occurred is what would govern.
That's correct.
And I guess...
But there is the Soldiers and Sailors Relief Act, which would protect some service members. So not going too far down that path. It relates to civil crimes.
Topic of another video, the Soldiers and Sailors Civil Relief Act. But there are some protections, but by and large, it's the state you live in that has jurisdiction over those civil matters.
The state you reside in at the time that you breach the contract.
Right. And I guess it becomes even more complicated when you have soldiers that go to Japan or Germany or Korea. What law governs that?
And that's a good question. It would depend on the arrangement between the United States and that host country.
So the status of forces agreement would determine, who has jurisdiction over that.
That's correct.
and that would be both applicable for the criminal matters and for civil matters.
As it relates to SOFA, I've always dealt with it on the criminal side. I've never dealt with it on civil, but I would assume that the laws are provided for that way as well.
Right. So if you're in Germany and you have a landlord-tenant issue, German law is going to apply.
That's absolute.
Same thing in Korea.
It's
Korean law that's going to apply.
That's correct.
So I suppose that if somebody's facing both civil, military, or foreign legal matters, and there's an intersection with a military nexus, they should contact a military lawyer to help detangle what jurisdiction, what venue, and what type of lawyer they actually need to hire.
Absolutely, because if you have a military member, there could be military consequences to the actions that they're taking, and if you don't have a lawyer who has an understanding of military law, they may give you good advice, but there may be consequences in the military system that you weren't given advice about.
So even if you hire a civilian lawyer for a civilian matter and it seems to be like a contract or something of that nature, you need to consult with a military lawyer to see if there's any military consequences to the advice the civilian lawyer's given you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you. My name is Will Helixon. I am the Warrior Advocate. We are the law office of Will M. Helixon. You defend the nation. We defend you.